Welcome, everyone, to the Entering into Space podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Miller. This podcast is dedicated to people out there who take pictures of stuff out in space from their backyards. Tonight's guest, and our first guest, is Tommy Lease. Tommy lives in Parker, Colorado, and has been producing some amazing images for over 3 years now. If you'd like to check out his work, he is on Instagram at Colorado Astro, where he has over 21,000 followers. So tonight, Astro Freaks, I give you Tommy Lease. Man, I've known you for what, like a year now? Almost 2 years? Something like that?
It's been a while.
Astro known you? Yeah.
Almost too long.
I know. Stop it. Stop it. So, the point of this podcast really is to kind of bring out like what we're all going through. But these people are scrolling on Instagram. Like I have your Instagram up right now because if I see something, I might ask you about it. So they're scrolling on Instagram. They're scrolling on all these social medias. They see these imagers like you. You're putting out a ton of great images, and they're like, "Well, who is that?" So that's the whole thing, is to kind of introduce you to more than just your images, but who you are. And so my first inaugural question that I'll be asking everybody is, there was a point in time in your life where you were just like, there's some stars. And then you were like, what? I can take pictures of that stuff? Like, how did that happen? How was that How was that process?
So it all goes back to it was a camping trip up in Ouray, Colorado. So I'm from California originally, but moved out to Colorado about 12 years ago. But about 4 years ago, we were doing a camping trip up in Ouray, Colorado. Beautiful place, dark skies, probably a Bortle 2 location. And prior to that, I was just doing, like landscape photography. I had my Nikon and just a kit lens, and maybe another like a wide angle fisheye lens. But yeah, I was like, let me just point this thing to the sky. I mean, because you could see the Milky Way with your bare eyes. So I was like, man, it would be awesome to get that on camera. So yeah, I just put it on. I had my tripod on, and I had no clue what I was doing. Then just pointed it up, and I think I took I don't even know if I knew how to take a long exposure, like to adjust the exposure length on the camera. But yeah, I think I did like a 5-second exposure, and I saw the Milky Way band, and I was I was hooked from there. So
yeah,
that's what got me into it. And then a couple more camping trips after that, you start researching. All right, how do I do like Milky Way photography with the DSLR? And I started adjusting my exposure lengths. Started off in Photoshop and just kind of processing images, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. I got a what was my I actually got a little tracking a go-to mount. It was an Explore Scientific IEXOS 100. I think it must have had like yeah, it's their tiny mount. It must have had I think like a 10, 15 pound weight capacity. And I had this, I'd gotten this Explore Scientific, I think it was a 115 acro. So it was a pretty big scope I was super undermounted. And I had an achromat, color fringe everywhere. But I got my first image of the Andromeda Galaxy, and honestly, that's where I was hooked. Like when you can, because I mean, it's cool to get the Milky Way. You can get the band and all the stars, but once you get your first DSO, that's kind of where the tables turn, and that was probably, I don't know, like 6 months after I took my first, Milky Way photo. So.
Yeah. Yep. So did you use any free programs, anything like, oh my God, I like this, but look at the prices, let me jump into this free? And then did you do anything like that? Like most people would start before you invested a ton of money?
I already had Photoshop because I was processing, landscape images, like, in sunsets and whatnot. So I started off, with probably like everyone else using Deep Sky Stacker. And then, deep sky stacker, then you process it, you stack it in deep sky, and then process it in Photoshop, and then it was good, and then progressed into Astro Pixel Processor (APP), and then after that was PixInsight, and now it's just been PixInsight only. So,
Oh yeah, you still stacking in Astropixel processor or using WBPP?
no, I use weighted batch preprocessing for everything.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't really see. I mean, APP Astropixel Processor is a great program, but for me, I just didn't see the point in paying for two programs when PixInsight had everything built into it. So
Yeah.
it's like you have the post processing and the stacking capabilities all in one. So APP is just kind of limited in that fashion where you can do somewhat post processing, but not really, So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
definitely noticing the new WBPP that's out. I get way better images than I did when it first came out. There was times where I would go back to DSS, Deep Sky Stacker,
yep,
but like
yeah,
now it's almost like I don't even have to use DBE anymore on some of the images. It's so clean.
yeah.
It's got to be a change there somewhere.
Well, it's not only that. Like when I first started using PixInsight to try and stack images, I think I started using PixInsight about 2.5 years ago. So I've been doing like deep sky astrophotography for about 3 years.
Yeah.
So about 6 months into it, I got the free version of PixInsight trial, and I tried stacking. I tried following the tutorials, and I'm like, this is just insanely hard.
Yeah.
So that's when I was using both PixInsight and APP. So, but now that the weighted batch preprocessing, you just literally dump all your files into it, and it's off to the races. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't even really need to adjust, all the, the I don't know what you'd call them, but the parameters,
Stacking parameters. Yeah.
yeah, all the default parameters. I mean, for all the the new guys out there that are just getting into it, if you just look how simple weighted batch preprocessing is, literally you just go into your folder, select all your light frames, and they can be, I shoot mono, as do you, so I have a mono camera, so I can dump LRGB SHO from one folder and just dump it into weighted batch preprocessing, and it sorts it for you. And same thing with your darks, your flats, and your dark flats. I mean, it's just super easy to use.
Have you let it auto crop for you yet?
The auto crop?
Yeah. Have you let it do
No,
that for you
I
yet?
let it. Yeah, I that's one thing I deselected. It
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the effort it's trying to do,
Yeah.
but I'd rather crop my own images,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just
My first one was spot on. I was like, man, this is amazing. It's like artificial intelligence. And then the next one, it
yeah.
like cropped it in half almost. I was like, yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thing was it was just one more step to,
Yeah.
run the stacking portion. I'm like, let's get to the post processing already.
So when you got hooked, I'm sure YouTube was a big resource. As for me, it was a huge resource. Who was the person that you maybe like clicked on first and maybe watched a bunch of their videos, just binged watched their videos? You remember?
Are you trying to give yourself
I'm not trying to
credit?
seduce you. No, this
Are you
isn't.
trying to
No.
give yourself credit because I watched your videos?
How
No,
would I
I
have
mean,
known? I mean,
yeah, well, that's how you and I met, right? I
yeah,
think I hit you up on, you had posted some images on Facebook, and I think you shared a couple of your videos, and I think that's how I just shot you a message, and that's when we started chatting.
yeah,
But you were a great influence, but I mean, I think every beginner's influence is also Trevor Jones. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
Astro Backyard. His just his website with the beginner astrophotography. I mean, it had
Yeah,
everything you needed, especially for everyone that's starting out with DSLRs. And I know he did a lot of that early on. Yeah, I mean, him. I really took inspiration also from Tegan Grable,
Oh yeah, definitely.
Rocky Mountain Astro.
Hmm.
Um, excellent astrophotographer. I've done a lot of, early on with Mark Carter. Him and I mean, he didn't really do a whole lot of videos in the beginning, but, we bounced a lot of ideas off of each other. And, but there's so many people out there that I watch so many different videos and try to, glean as much as I can. Sean Nielsen, Visible Dark.
Yeah,
There's a ton of people. Amy, I believe. Do you know what's
yeah.
her
Amy Astro.
Amy Astro? She had some really
Yep.
good stuff. I mean, there's a ton of people out there that are just, they give great tutorials, and it saves you so much time too. Because when I
Oh
went
yeah.
into this, I didn't have anyone like mentoring me locally. I didn't join my uh, astronomy group until Denver Astronomical Society until like a year and a half, 2 years in, and I had already learned the majority of what I needed to learn. Then it was just kind of fine tuning the craft, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe it or not, when I first started and I was getting into Photoshop, I found this guy and his YouTube channel was called Boodle Woodle. I was
Yeah.
like, and this guy he was English and he had some of the best. He's the one that got me into YouTube actually because he had some of the best. But there was one video he had where his apartment caught on fire, but he still
Mm.
finished the technique. And then he goes, "I have to go. My apartment's on fire."
Dude,
That
that's
was in the
dedication
video.
right there. That is
Yeah,
dedication.
yeah.
But it sounds like
So
something I would do.
yeah.
I mean,
No, just
honestly,
kidding.
I
Yeah,
was literally just, I mean, 15, 20 minutes ago, I had this counterweight
yeah,
for my mount that
yeah.
it was, I had fashioned it out of an old bar, like a bar weight, a gym weight.
Of
And
course.
I needed it to add more weight for my 10-inch Newtonian that I just got.
Thing's heavy, isn't it?
Dude, it's heavy. But so what I was saying is, I had to chip away the ice on the ground because we still have a lot of snow.
Yeah.
I left it on the ground and it's literally frozen underneath a sheet of ice, and I was chipping away at it before I got
Oh
on
my
the
gosh.
street.
I don't know how you
I
do it.
mean,
I don't know how you
that's
do it.
dedication right there. I mean,
That is. I'm impressed. It's bow
yeah,
down. If I had a bow down thing here, I would click that button. So, uh, another question is: we've all bought something astrophotography, especially in the beginning, and we thought this was going to be the bomb, and it turned out to bomb. Like, so what's something you could think of that you bought that you thought was going to be badass, and it ended up it's still in the drawer somewhere or still in the box, and you got zero use out of it?
dude, it was that first telescope I got.
Yeah. Well, you got the
After
you now you
like,
got Andromeda with it. You can't Yeah.
no, I mean, yeah, you know me. I go through telescopes. I go through cameras. I've tried everything under the sun, literally.
Yes. Yeah.
I have a problem. I will go on camera saying that. I've tested it. The only telescope I haven't tried is like a CDK, corrected Dahl Kirkman.
You
Um,
haven't had a Rasa yet. I'm waiting on the Rasa.
no, I haven't had a Rasa, but I do have a poor man's Rasa, essentially.
Oh,
I mean, with
yeah.
the Newtonian with the Star Zona reducer brings you down to
Hmm.
f3. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that I've tried and I was absolutely just disappointed and it just stayed in the drawer. I just buy and sell. Like I buy and sell used stuff, and I love trying new things. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just for me, astrophotography isn't just about the post processing and the final image. It sounds so cliche, but it's also the journey. I like tinkering with new types of telescopes. I own 3 Newtonians. I'm a sucker for culminating telescopes, I guess. But no, I mean there's plenty of stuff that's just in my drawer collecting dust. But it's not because like I thought the world of it, and I was like disappointed and got angry and threw it away.
That's
Um,
good. That's good.
I don't really have anything like that, but you know that first acro telescope, though, achromatic telescope, that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
I
That
was,
price point though, that'll get you. I
I
remember
know,
looking at
I
that.
know.
That was like $500 for 100
But
millimeters. Wow.
I mean, dude, I honestly thought about getting like a 130 or a 150 millimeter acro because you can pick them up for like $500
Yeah,
and
dirt
shooting
cheap.
it with mono. Because with the mono imaging, especially
Yeah.
narrowband, you don't really have to worry about the star bloat. I mean, maybe with the O3 channel, but I've seen a lot of great images come out of those. But with an OSC, there's no way. I mean, the
Yeah.
images are just going to be. Yeah.
So what's something that you've done in the past that you look back on and you just cringe? You're like, I can't believe I said that, or I can't believe I processed it this way, or I can't believe I imaged this way.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few images that I look back on and I'm like, oh man. But I mean, that's a part of the journey, right? You try to learn from it. Um, whenever I was processing images in the beginning, and I remember actually talking to Mark about this, Mark Carter, and I still remember I was like, man, how do you? I was like, you'll image for more than one night. Like I
Yeah.
thought that was like a foreign idea to me. I was like, no, I want to try to get as many targets as I can, and you know, and it just goes back to you. The more time you add to your image, the better it's going to turn out, right? But I
Yeah.
didn't know that starting out. But yeah, I see some of the images, and I'm like, ah, gosh, only if I had doubled the amount of time on it. If I would have went from 5 hours to 10 hours, or now 10 hours to 20 hours.
What's your longest?
So my longest was 47 hours.
Cool.
That was on
Very
the
cool.
I think it was so I had I had 37 hours and I beat it by 10, but I had 37 hours on that squid and bat nebula that I won the APOD with. And
Cool.
that was my longest imaging. But then I topped it with one of those Abel
Able.
catalog,
Yeah.
Able. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I forget the designation, but it I think it was like the bear claw one, but I don't know. But yeah, that one it had a like a bear claw type deal. They're both
Mm-hmm.
planetary nebulas, and then it had like a little soap bubble. But yeah, to pull out that kind of detail, you need that those kinds of hours on them. I
Oh
mean, especially when
yeah.
you're doing like really faint oxygen 3. I mean, the hydrogen alphas everywhere, but
Yeah.
that O3 you need to get a lot of data on. What's your longest?
Uh, yeah, I think I went 50 hours. That's probably the longest. I have this, I don't know if it's a delusion or a daydream, or maybe those are the same. I'm not really sure.
Probably.
I guess a delusion is more reality based and a daydream is la la land. I don't know. But,
Yeah.
I just have that, oh, I'm going to get 60 or 70 hours. But I hit that 40-hour mark and I'm like, sick of this thing. Sick of looking at it. Just
So,
process it already.
dude, I go a different direction in my head. I'm like, I still go back to those early days. I'm like, there are so many targets out there to shoot. Why am I
Yeah.
spending 50 hours on an image? But as I've kind of progressed, and this is one thing I actually learned from Tegan Grable. He's like he showed comparisons. He's like, here's 10 hours, here's 20 hours, here's 30 hours, and he gave this long write up on Facebook about spend as much time as you can on a target. It will improve the quality. And I mean, he's right. Once you stack 30 hours of hydrogen alpha data, I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like the detail. And you don't, and the processing is so minimal. Like you really, it's so
Yeah.
clean,
You ever find
especially
like there's
when
diminishing returns there for that in some images where you feel like I didn't really gain much by spending an extra 5 hours out there?
there are, and I think it depends on the target and what kind of detail you're trying to pull out. Um, if you're trying to get like, for example, like distant galaxies, and the galaxies behind those galaxies, the more
Yeah.
the more photons bring into your sensor, the less noise, or the more it averages out the noise, right? So,
Yeah.
which becomes detail of
Yeah.
the faint galaxy or nebulosity. So, but yeah, I'm with you, man. I think there is a point of diminishing returns, but like, especially with these new sensors, like so I run the ASI 2600 Pro, and it is a beast. I mean, it's super clean. Um, the QE percentage is like 91%. Um, you know, I've
And for
kind of
those of you
started,
out there in the beginning, that's an efficiency that's
yeah,
efficiency number. How many photons does it turn into electrons? What's the drop
right,
off there? So yeah, so
right.
that's a high. That's high. That's
It's high.
amazing.
So like, to me, that equals out less imaging time. So because the data is so clean to start off with, unless we go back to trying to squeak out every last detail. But as far as cleanliness, that camera has 0 amp glow, so we don't have to worry about taking darks. But darks, calibrate out amp glow. That's not the big deal. But it's the cleanliness of the sensor, which also equates into, you know, I think less imaging time. And also, that's primarily why I shoot with Newtonians at f4. So when you combine f4 with a super clean sensor, it really does reduce your total time on target, I guess.
Oh yeah, I'm noticing that with the Newt. I'm like 4 or 5 images into it since I just got it. Same one
Yeah.
as you, I guess. And
Yep.
man, like the amount I sent you guys that M101 image, just some luminance, and that was really bad. The seeing was horrible. There was clouds. I think it was like 3 or 4 hours, and that was probably the best luminance data I've ever got
Yeah.
on that galaxy. And the other little galaxies too. I was like, man, where do these guys come from? Where'd y'all come from? You
Right.
know?
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, and you go up to that 10-inch aperture too. I mean, that
Yeah.
thing's just a freaking light bucket. It just,
Yeah. It's also a sale. I'm finding out.
dude.
Ugh.
I am in the. We were talking about this on Messenger.
Yeah,
I need to build a windbreak for that thing.
for sure.
Because so where my telescope sits in the yard, I'm in between two houses, and that
Yeah.
wind just howls down that kind of pathway between the houses, and it just, I don't know. I got to do something, but I live in an HOA neighborhood, so I got to
Yeah.
appease the HOA gods,
No. So, what
So
image data set do you have that you have probably processed the most? Like, what do you just keep going back to and new tips and tricks? What's got the most like JPEGs in the
oh,
folder?
dude, honestly, I think it would have to be the Soul Nebula.
You think so? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
it's between three: the Soul
Yeah,
Nebula, the Heart Nebula, or North America
yeah,
and Pelican. I'd say those four. Like, if you look back through my images, like, my catalog, so to say. I mean,
hmm
I've got tons and tons. I mean, also Orion, right? I mean, but the thing with like Soul Nebula and those over there, I primarily love imaging in narrowband, and I think you
yeah,
do too.
yep.
Um,
I kind of
but
have to. I think you got darker skies than I got, right?
I do, but it's not because I have to. I just love all the different color combinations, and yeah, I think for me, my imaging doesn't really come from a scientific standpoint. It comes more
Yeah.
from an artistic standpoint. So my final image, I want it to look, badass. And I want it to look kind of
Of
abstract.
course. Yeah,
but
of course.
but you know what I mean? Like, you get so much
No.
more freedom with narrowband imaging, and you can, assign the channels, multiple different ways.
Yeah.
And and also, the hydrogen alpha data is just so killer. um I don't know.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your image that you've processed hundreds of times
Uh, Whew, man. Yeah, I think I'd be maybe Seder region. Because that
Yeah,
was, I think, the Seder region. I did my first like narrowband YouTube
I
video on it,
I still remember
and
that video. That's the one of
yeah,
the ones I learned from.
and just all of a sudden I was like, I get it, because I had done a few. I just got into narrowband, and I'd done a few before, and they were. I was like, man, what
Yeah,
is the deal with this? But that Seder, I took a whole nother approach. I forgot. I think I watched. I forgot who the guy's name is. So if you're out there, I apologize. Uh, but his videos really led me into color masking,
yeah.
and that was a huge leap forward. Color
Oh
masking,
yeah,
and that allowed me to really differentiate the gases in there, and it was just mind blowing. I still remember, like, my girlfriend was somewhere. She was in Tampa or somewhere, and I remember just texting the crap out of her. I was like, "You've got to look at this." It was like, I was like, "I can't believe it." But
yeah,
yeah, that so. But
yeah.
honestly, like if you said, say, what would be your best? Like, I would like the true color, the dusty, dark nebula color, true color image to really get one of those one day. That's my goal. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I mean,
got to go somewhere though.
you got to go to some dark skies, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about the color masks, that was kind of like the shift in the processing. So masks, like, and even so, and I actually made a OSC video, just a processing video, and I shared what you shared in your video on how, when you apply the HA as luminance, which
hmm
is still something I do to this day. And
hmm
I actually was on my uh, Denver Astro meeting last night, and someone talked about it, and they're like, "Yeah, I didn't know you could do that, and how awesome it makes it look, and how much cleaner the data comes out." So,
yeah,
for you guys out there that are listening, if you're trying to improve your image quality, reapply that HA as luminance. Go watch
yeah.
Steven's video on it. It's great.
Yeah, if you're just shooting one shot color, pull that luminance and then
Hmm.
process it, do your noise reduction, do your sharpening, and then reapply it. And there's definitely a trick to reapplying it, because when you plop it on, everything's kind of matted,
Yeah.
and you really have to kind of put some curves onto that luminance to get it to really pop.
Well, that,
Because if
and
you
I
just
think
put it
you,
on, you're like, ugh, this looks, ugh, what happened?
yeah,
you
and I
know,
think you remember you telling me or talking about it in the video too. Is you just add a little bit of convolution, so you blur it just ever so slightly.
yeah,
Because the other thing you want to do is you want to apply your deconvolution to your H alpha
yeah,
channel, and
hmm
that's where all your detail is.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if you once you
And if I,
convolute the background or the RGB quote unquote,
yep.
then you add your HA as luminance. That's where all your detail is.
Yeah, and
So
that convolution, I didn't. I just saw somebody do that and went, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I finally figured out basically what that does is it just gets rid of all your what they call chromatic noise, your color
yeah,
noise. So it just basically gives your luminance a really smooth image to lay over. But
I
yeah,
remember
that's a great trick.
I was screwing around with the convolution early on. I'm like, oh man, that actually does a really good job as noise reduction.
Yeah,
That I did use it as noise reduction for a little bit.
dust and scratches. People who's used it,
Well,
more power.
and now it's all about the noise exterminator, Russell
Yeah.
Croman,
Oh
just
man, that guy.
killing it.
Russell. Maybe
Thumbs
I can
up,
have him on the show one of these days. I don't know. We'll
thumbs
see.
up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, thank you for
yeah.
the.
Thumbs up. I've given him a lot of money. Thumbs
Yeah,
up.
me too, me too.
Yeah.
But that blur exterminator is worth its
Oh,
weight in gold. I'll tell you what.
yeah. Yeah,
It's
for
badass.
sure. So okay, so somebody comes to you and they're like, "Man, this is amazing, and I really want to get into this, but I really don't know where to start." And so, where would you lead them? Would you just blow their mind with a million things to buy? Would you set them up simple? Would you hand them a pair of binoculars? What would you do? I don't mean to lead you, but how would you start somebody off new to this
My
hobby?
the first thing I do, so I actually get this a lot on Instagram. I get
Hmm
messages on Instagram. I'll be honest with you. I send Trevor Jones a lot of traffic. I
Yeah,
just said I literally I'll go find them that I mean, why reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, there's a few people
yeah,
that I've worked with, but a lot of them, honestly, like Trevor Jones literally has it listed out on his Astro Backyard webpage, the
Yeah.
beginner guide to astrophotography. So I'll just literally copy that link and send it over to him. That way, and I just say, hey, if you have any questions, come back to me. But like, because there's a lot, like I'm getting a lot of messages about it. So, but yeah, but if there are people like that are, that I'm more friends with, that I know a little better, and they're asking about it,
Yeah.
the first thing I ask them is, what is their budget? Because as we know,
And
I
they
mean,
go, "What? You got to spend money on this hobby?"
right. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the qualifier is to ask them, do you have a DSLR, right? And
Yeah.
then
What do you
it's
got
like,
around the
well,
house?
yeah, what do you got around the house? Then, recommend a star tracker to them. That way they can get long exposure, use their tripod they have, and all they have to
Hmm.
do is go spend, $300-400 on a star tracker. Then, if because you don't want to have them go spend thousands of dollars and then never use it again. I mean,
No.
try to set them up with good expectations. I think that's the best route, but I honestly do recommend them to go look at Trevor's page, just because it's the most comprehensive that I've seen. And like I said, why reinvent the wheel when it's already there?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think like the magic focal length is? Like, let's say somebody came to you and said, "Listen, you can only image with this focal length."
800 millimeters.
And okay, well, okay, moving on. What? Any reason? Fine. Yeah.
I actually I do think it's 800 millimeters. That
Think
800
so?
millimeter 8-inch f4 newt.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get galaxies. I mean, yeah, a little bit larger galaxies. I mean, crop in on them,
Hmm.
and it's still wide enough for a lot of nebula. Um, yeah, I think 600 millimeters is a little too shallow. It's not enough to really get the galaxies. Um, I don't know. I think that 800 is kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about you?
I've owned a bunch of different scopes with different focal lengths, and then I go, man, they're so similar. That was kind of a waste.
Yeah,
I imaged at 384 millimeters for a long time. I
same
imaged at
here.
750 millimeters starting out, which is not recommended. But I
Yeah,
didn't know I had a 6-inch Newtonian, and I put a DSLR camera on it. I don't know.
right.
But yeah, I would definitely have to agree that it would be somewhere between the 500 to 800 millimeter.
Yeah,
Is it kind
I
of the
mean,
best of both worlds? That's a
800
good
is
balance.
yeah. I think 800 is like, if you just talk about universal scope, right? Because you want to be able
Yeah.
to image galaxies and nebula. Like if you're at 500, I mean, you're getting Andromeda and maybe the Triangulum, and
Hmm.
but 800 you're getting a little closer. Um, but yeah, I think the 800, even 1,000, right? I mean,
Yeah.
1,000 with an APS-C sensor, you're still getting that kind of wide field of view. But if you're
Yeah.
on the micro four thirds sensor, then 600. So it also depends on your field of view with your sensor too, right? Because you've got, like, I've
Yeah.
got the 533, the ASI 533 square sensor that I'm going to use for galaxies with the Newtonian, the 10-inch. But you're going to be really up close and have a narrow field of view with nebula, even at 800 millimeter focal
Oh
length.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's definitely a trade off. The closer you are, the more your guiding has to be spot on. I really think, like, for me, like right now, I have a 180 millimeter uh, triplet, and I want to image with that more because it's a wide field of view. It's basically a little mini telescope. But in between that and the 800, it's like, eh,
yeah,
there's not enough differentiation to me.
I
So
agree. Yeah, I need to get, so like I've got that 6-inch newt with, and then you put the reducer on it. So its native focal length is 600 millimeter. With the reducer, it brings it down to 450. And then it's like, well, I thought about getting like I had that 70 millimeter refractor, and I'm like, it's just too close. And I
Yeah.
was shooting at f5, and I'm like with the refractor, but I'm shooting at f3 with the Newtonian. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
So, what do you do to get a break from astrophotography and any other hobbies? No, shoveling snow,
Dude, I am
chipping ice. That is.
no, I do my two other hobbies are woodworking
Oh, cool.
and four wheeling, off roading.
Yeah.
So um, doing a lot less of those two.
Yeah.
Now that I've had two. So I image with two rigs. So I've got a Skywatcher EQ6 mount and then the HEQ5 mount. And you know, astrophotography takes up a lot of time, um, and especially out here in Colorado, we get quite a few clear nights. So
Yeah.
we're blessed with some nice skies. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, whenever the wife wants some new custom woodwork done in the house, then you know, I got to take a
And
break.
you geek out on that. That's
I mean,
cool.
honestly, my break from life is astrophotography. I mean, I love it. I love
Yeah.
post processing. I love finicking with the telescopes and all that. I mean, that is my go to hobby. But the other two, I do still enjoy, especially when we
I
go
mean,
we go up camping. I love fishing too. You know, we
oh,
go
cool.
yeah, we go up and we go camping, and I'll bring the pole and go fishing in the lakes and sometimes the
Heck
rivers.
yeah.
But I know you're a big fisherman, right?
Oh yeah, that's another expensive hobby that you can find tons of opinions on Facebook and Facebook groups and
Yeah,
oh my gosh, yeah,
yeah, but you're
I
saltwater,
realize that.
right?
Both,
Both
yep, both fresh and salt, yep. But
nice.
it's kayaks and motors
Yeah,
and
I saw that
yeah.
kayak setup you got, man. That thing's pretty killer.
I know. I was like,
It's like
I
Mad
could
Max.
buy
It's
a
like
camera that fits
yeah,
here or a 13-foot kayak. Wait, I can't spread my arms that far apart, but you get the idea. It's huge.
dude,
Yeah,
that thing looks like something out of Mad Max, but like,
it's
yeah, I mean,
bad,
it
and
is.
we've named them. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
pretty awesome.
it's awesome. Yeah,
Nice.
for sure. So, so social media.
Yeah.
I want to get into that a little bit.
Oh,
You
that
know,
thing.
that thing. Sometimes I feel, and like I said, I'm trying to ask you a question here, so I'm trying not to lead you, but I'm just trying to get to the point of sometimes I have to really check myself because I almost feel like I'm imaging for social media instead of myself.
Yeah.
Like I need to get that image out. I need to get my exposure. So how do you feel about that? Do you ever have to like kind of self check yourself? And then what is something that you see on social media that is like a pet peeve or something that you're just like, oh man, I can't believe they're doing that again?
So yeah, man, I've actually had to check myself. I actually so there was a point like where I was that's what I was doing. I was imaging just to get images out on social media. I went back to the one night imaging, put
Mm-hmm.
out a mediocre image. You know, I'll be honest, just so you can get those views and those likes and the follows and
The
but
dopamine.
yeah, well, it's the dopamine, but it's also trying to get those followers so you can maybe get paid too, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just the. It's also like, hey, maybe I can make a little side cash doing this. But yeah, actually, recently, it was I had kind of a long bout of you know cloudy nights, and I was actually like, it was kind of nice to not have to like I kind of just pulled the brake or pushed the brakes, and I was like, you know what, I just whatever. I mean, I don't. I'll just I'm processing, and I wasn't even posting images. Like every now and then I'll post a reprocess, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I definitely had to kind of push the brakes on that because it does lead you down that rabbit hole of that like you said the dopamine rush and you know but yeah I think you got to kind of check yourself and before you wreck yourself. No. um,
Yeah, it was funny. One of my videos, I said like NWA, and I went negotiators with attitude. You know, that's what I thought they were called.
um, you said like the pet peeves on social media,
Yeah,
like some other astrophotographers might post. You know, so like Instagram, for example, like I see all these videos that people put out, and I'm guilty of it too because that's really how you can get paid on Instagram. The more
hmm,
videos you put out, that's they're paying you on the reels. But I see some videos and I'm like, just stop. And they're people that are just putting out one or two a day, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh man. But other than that, I mean, it's just everyone sharing their images. I don't really have a problem with it. I mean, more
yeah.
power to you. It's cool to see. It's kind of cool to see how far astrophotography's come in the past 2 years. I mean, and I've
Oh
only
my
been in it
goodness,
for
right?
3 or 4.
Yeah,
But yeah, ever since COVID, it's just taken off like crazy. You know,
yeah. It was a great stay-at-home hobby for
I mean,
sure.
you go on Astrobin now. I mean, everyone's a star. I mean, dude, there's some people. Seriously, there's some people putting out some killer stuff. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
damn. So
yeah,
it's just kind of stepping up the game too. I mean, you also see it with the technology too, right? With cameras getting better, with the
oh
new
yeah,
like the strain wave mounts, the I forget what. Yeah, they're called strain wave, but like
yeah. The
ZWO
ZWO. Yeah,
ZWO has them. Pegasus now has one. Ioptron. So, but yeah, I mean, it's all like I know I'm going on a tangent here, but yeah, it's kind of like the supply and demand, right? So once COVID hit, everyone needed a hobby to turn to that was you could do from your home, and
yeah,
a lot of people look to the sky, which is really cool. It really helped out this hobby for sure.
yeah. You know, it's crazy. I actually did astrophotography, no lie, with film,
With film,
and if yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I had a off-axis guider. I had a 10 inch, which I didn't even know. I had a 10-inch Orion or 10-inch Meade LX50, and I
dang,
had an Olympus OM1 with the cable where you could set
wow,
the and you did unscrew it and the shutter would yeah, and I would shoot images through it. I had no clue what I was doing, and I
dude,
actually got some images.
you're
And then I
you're
was thinking, man, I was like, if I would have stuck with that, Trevor Jones, whatever.
dude, you're aging yourself, man. Maybe
It's bad.
leave that part out of the video.
I'll cut that out later.
Cut
Yeah.
it out in post.
Cut it out. So, so let's. I'm gonna end it with this because we're doing good. This is really good. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I hope
Yeah,
you are
yeah,
too.
me too.
Yeah. But I have from the very start had tons of daydreams. I would daydream about. They were stupid too. I would daydream about like driving around and seeing a yard sale and somebody was selling all their Astro gear. I
Yeah,
was like, oh my god, I'll just buy that. You know, just I've had all
estate
kind of like to
sales.
roll off roof observatories and huge
Yeah.
scopes. And so, what's a Tommy Lease Astro daydream look like?
Oh man. My biggest thing that I want to do right now is get a little more property, so I can get away from the neighbors. Well, actually, I don't mind the neighbors, so I can get away from my house. Because right
Yeah.
now, my house, I have a 2-story house, and my backyard it blocks my eastern view, so
Oh
I
man.
have to wait longer for targets to come up because the majority of them rise in the east.
Yeah.
So
That'd be all
property.
of them.
I want to get a little bit more property, even just like a half
Yeah.
acre, an acre. Um, and darker skies would be cool. But I mean, I get pretty, I'm in a Bordeaux 5-ish location, and the sky's not bad. But it's just
Yeah.
getting a little more property and either a roll off roof ROR observatory, or if I can ever afford it, like a sky shed or something. But
So that leads a whole nother thing. Like, what's your astrophotography philosophical thoughts on people? And I'm actually have a guy lined up who has an observatory he timeshares out in 3 other states away.
mm,
So, what's your philosophy on having that fully automated scope that just says, I'm going to take an image and then you just get a whole bunch of data, or these guys that are using Telescope Live that are using a scope out in Chile? I mean, are you a more power to them? Are you, hey, I might try that? Or what's your,
more power to them. It's here's the thing. Like I wish I could afford to do all that, but even if I could afford to do all that, I am more hands-on. I
mm-hmm,
wanna interact with the equipment. It goes back to not just processing the data, it's working through the problems. You know, man, I got a new part, I got a new reducer, I got to figure out the spacing, the back spacing. Even though those things are kind of a pain in the ass, it's also fun to tinker with. Uh, the one thing I don't want to really work on anymore is backlash or dealing with that kind
yeah,
of crap. I
yeah,
it just it I wish I could afford like like one of those Paramount ME mounts or the
oh my gosh,
Astrophysics Mach 1, but I get by with my Skywatcher mounts that are they're trusty and you know, but what are your thoughts on the whole remote imaging type
uh,
thing?
yeah, I'm right there with you. It's like I I'm almost kind of feeling a little weird because, I used to sit out there, when I used to start out, I would end my session at midnight because I didn't know how to meridian flip.
Right, same here.
I had no clue.
Yeah,
So I would wake up or I would sit out there on the patio. I'd get no sleep and I would wait for it to just about collide to the mount. And then I would stop and I'd bring everything in
yeah,
quietly, of course, um, and put it all away. And then I would go to bed. And then I realized I can meridian flip and I can automate things more. And now it's like I just go out there and I set everything on my phone and I literally go to bed and I wake up and it's parked.
yeah,
So I feel like I've disconnected a little bit
yeah,
from, that romantic kind of engagement that I had in the past. I did not enjoy being on my knees, straining, looking through a 9x50 spot and scope trying to find shit.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I don't miss that.
yeah.
Let's not get carried away.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
agree with you though. You kind of disconnect from it a little bit.
yeah,
As far as the disconnect goes too, like now that I'm about 3.5 years into this, you know, some of the excitement is a little. I mean, it's definitely like when I first got my Andromeda image. There's no way I'm going to get back to that excitement. It's just a little different now, right? And
yeah,
the other problem is too is we're imaging the same targets each year. So for me, what I've been trying to do is like right now I'm working on some random part of Barnard's Loop in Orion.
hmm,
I'm just trying to find these random objects to try and get that excitement back. I guess you could say. I mean, there's still excitement, but you kind of you know what I mean. Trying to
yeah.
trying to do stuff that's a little new and a little bit more challenging. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I just I wish we could. I wish I could go down to the southern hemisphere and go take some of their targets.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that. Like, I talk to people all the time that are from down there, and I'm like, "Hey, let's do a data swap," and
Right?
nobody's swapped with me yet. Like, I want a Statue of Liberty data, but see, even that, like, I didn't take the picture. I mean, you can give me data,
Right.
I can go get that. I'll probably go download that somewhere. So, but it would be nice to just go on a
And
vacation and
that's
get
the thing,
further
right?
south. And
That's what you said
yeah,
right there. Is like, yeah, like you didn't take the picture.
no,
Going back to the remote imaging and the telescope live stuff, and you know, and then it's like, well, even if you have the equipment in the facility that's hundreds or thousands of miles away, it's like, well, I mean, Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of partial to doing what we're doing in our backyards, more hands on. You know,
Yep.
getting down and dirty, fixing things. So
Yeah, and I think you have to get to that point where you go, I am going to get a little better. I feel like I get better every year.
oh yeah,
I'm, and I try to mitigate that expectation of going from zero to hero that fast. You know, I'm going to slowly improve, but I do know I have to reality check that in Bortle 6-7 skies here in Central Florida, there's a lot of stuff I'm just not going to image.
yeah.
You know, no matter how much effort I put into it. So yeah, trying
I,
to find those different things, different cameras, different scopes. You know, I always get excited about new gear. Who doesn't? Because
oh
it
yeah,
offers an opportunity
you're
to,
you're talking
yeah,
to the new gear king. I mean,
yeah.
it's
It was,
and it's
yeah,
huge.
yeah,
So like I the only thing I really buy new are my cameras and my mounts. But I
yeah.
buy used telescopes. I've bought used cameras too, but used telescopes, used filters, you name it. I mean, I'm on cloudy nights and Astromart nightly. I'm just
You,
scouring for new
you should
stuff.
get paid to be a Astro Gear broker. You know, somebody calls you up, says, "Hey, I'm looking for this." You
I should,
find it. You charge 10% or 7% or whatever. You ship it to them. I'm telling you, man, it's a business model.
yeah, yeah.
Like, give me a percentage of this. That was a great because you like I don't do that. I just buy brand new because I'm like I don't know where to look. But
Hey,
so I envy you and be able to do. I know, but
cloudy nights and
I have the worst luck.
yeah. Luckily, I mean, knock on wood. I've had
Yeah,
pretty good luck.
yeah, you did good.
Yeah.
So any goals to wrap up with, you know, like, hey, like the tangible goal, like, hey, anything you're actually physically, tangibly working on to, I know you just got a new, you know, a new 10-inch new, but is there anything out there like, hey, man, this time next year, I want to be doing this in the hobby?
Well, a more immediate goal is actually do a collaboration with you and Mark. Um, that's
Good
that.
plug.
I mean, what's that?
Good plug.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's something I've never done is actually do a
No.
full. I mean, I've donated some data for a collaboration, but it wasn't a true
Yeah.
collaboration. So that's one of my goals is to do some badass, 100-hour image with you guys. Um, One other thing I need to try to do, and I've avoided them like the plague, is to do a mosaic. Um,
I've never done one either.
I it's
Show me
just
how.
it gives me anxiety thinking about trying it with a monochrome camera.
Yeah.
OSD, it's like okay, I can do that, but yeah, I think those are my two main. And then on top of that is just try to just get more time on your targets. That's one thing even though I've done those 47-hour images, I still probably only average like 10 to 15 hours on my images,
Yeah.
and I should try to step it up more. But I'm always like, well, I don't know when my next clear night's going to be, and I always get another clear night.
Yeah. I
I
know.
get
I
lucky.
know.
I
Right.
get lucky with the skies. So yeah, those are my three main goals. But as far as like targets go, I mean, I've kind of shot them all. I,
Yeah.
I mean, I really there's some galaxies I haven't imaged, but then that goes back to I don't really have the focal length for it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately in Colorado we don't really have great seeing. So, you know, my I've tried imaging with, 1600, 2000 millimeter focal length, and
Whew.
my images are just mushy, and
Yeah. That's
so
rough.
it's tough. But what about you? What are your goals coming up this year?
Yeah, definitely the collaboration effort
Yeah,
that we've got planned. So super excited. I'll talk to Mark about that next week because I got him on the hook.
yeah,
Uh, so he's my guest numero dos.
nice.
So, uh, man, as far as that is to, I have some lease property that has dark skies, and I've actually been thinking about getting like the Ioptron little sky guider
Yeah,
and 180 millimeter using my TPO and getting my camera and getting a battery. I've never imaged off a battery. Everybody talks about imaging off a battery, and I'm like, why? There's a wall outlet right there.
Yeah.
So, getting up there to that lease, because those are boreal forest guys, super dark, and just dedicating maybe 2 nights to an image. Like, I've never done it. I've never taken advantage of it. I need to.
Go after that Iris Nebula.
Yeah, something like that. Just get some dark,
there's a
dusty.
lot of great dark nebulosity around that one. That's a great target.
So that'd be mine for sure. But cool, dude. I super appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun.
Keep talking to you, man. Like always.
Yeah, man. And definitely, let the other nerds out there know if they want to come on and share their story. That's what this is all about. I think that's what people got from this today, was hearing who you are, Tommy Lease, and how you got started.
I'm always down to talk astrophotography.
Hell yeah. All right, man. It's been fun.
Hey,
Virtual fist bump.
Virtual fist bump.
There you go, brother.